The three-day B20 or Business 20 meeting has concluded here in the national capital. This is where the Prime Minister spoke on the last day of the meeting of top global business leaders. The meeting happened here in the national capital 2 weeks before the G20. Now, what is the B20? It's one of the most important meetings leading up to the big G20 meeting that India will host next weekend. This is a meeting of top global business leaders, economic leaders, thought leaders that come together to suggest and to make recommendations for the G20, and this meeting is specifically focused on economic growth. This time, the B20 meeting focused on sustainable economic growth, and it also focused on digital transformation and AI, among several other pressing concerns of the global economy. Now, the B20 has made certain recommendations for the G20. The B20 communique is out, and they have made recommendations that could be taken up by the G20 countries when they meet in Delhi next week. If we talk about some of the major recommendations that have been made by the B20, the number one recommendation is that the B20 group recommends setting up a global SDG acceleration fund. So a fund to accelerate the development for sustainable development goals. And they are saying that this fund should be set up for financing of global public goods. And this is proposed as a transformative initiative to mobilize resources and accelerate progress towards achieving the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. I'm reading out of the communique that the B20 has released about the recommendations for the G20. Along with that, about this fund, that is a very important recommendation, the B20 says that this fund is proposed as a global multi-donor fund. So let's understand how this fund will work, if at all the B20 recommendation is taken. So the G20 countries and the next 10 largest countries by GDP would allocate and contribute a fixed capital following a formula based on their GDP and the per capita GDP as a proportion of the world GDP. It says that each member country would have the discretion of adopting voluntary or mandatory contribution of 0.2% of profits of larger enterprises for 3 years. That's what the B20 is recommending for this fund. The other important recommendation is the B20 group says that the G20 countries should encourage national governments to create a credit enhancement fund for MSMEs to improve their access to finance and build financial resilience. So along with the SDGs, along with climate change, digital infrastructure, another important focus of the B20 has been financing and supporting MSMEs. Along with that, they say, after the Russia-Ukraine war and after the pandemic, global supply chains were disrupted because supply chains from China, from Russia, from Ukraine, all were disrupted after the pandemic and the war. So the B20 also recommends building resilient and sustainable global value chains. They say that we should foster global coordination for crisis mitigation and resilience and encourage building of resilience in GVCs or global value chains through risk-mitigated sourcing in the light of the recent events that we saw. On digital infrastructure, the B20 says that we should establish requisite infrastructure and drive technology adoption to accelerate cross-border trade and efficiency. They've also set a target for this. In 2019, the world population that was engaging in online billion purchases was 1.48 billion, and they have a target to increase this, actually to double this to 3 billion in the year 2026. They also say that the private sector involvement for financial inclusion should be increased. Gender should be an important consideration when financial inclusivity is being considered and is being worked on by several governments of the G20 countries. And they also say that cross-border payment innovations should be incentivized and consumer protection should be enhanced. Even the Prime Minister actually spoke about this in his speech, and he said that there should be an International Consumer Care Day, and that's what's been spoken about in the B20 communique as well, that we should adopt a strong consumer protection framework that focuses on improving cybersecurity, maintaining data privacy, and resolving consumer complaints in order to increase consumer safety and trust. They also say the digital divide should be bridged. They have a target set for that as well. The percentage of people that were connected to the internet in the year 2022, according to the communique, was 66%. And they say that the world population to be connected to the internet by 2025 should be increased from that 66% to 75%. Another important recommendation, setting up a virtual digital lab and library as a platform to promote cross-border collaboration for research and development, knowledge transfer and dissemination of the latest information on globally available resources. These are some of the recommendations made. Along with that, the B20 says that we should accelerate net zero transition via carbon market and common ESG standards. Along with that, they say we should build skills via technology-driven framework, and women should be included in the development via skill development and via financial inclusivity as well. So a focus on climate, a focus on gender equality, a focus on MSMEs, digital transformation and bridging the digital divide, all have been covered in the communique that has been agreed on at the B20 summit. It's of course now we'll all look forward to what happens in the G20 and whether any decisions or discussions are held on these recommendations that the B20 has made. In the national capital, with camera person Ashok Mahale, Priyanshi Sharma for NDTV.